open source developers, we spend a lot of time pushing code up to GitHub. We merge pull requests also on GitHub. And we spend some time trying to figure out why our builds have failed again. Or we're looking for places to fix our bad code. And we're using some awesome tools to do this with. And when things are going well, we are awesome to each other. But when things go wrong, and they go wrong a lot more than we think, we can be pretty horrible to each other. And this is just from one guy in one email. And fortunately, not from the Ruby community. But in other places, in our community and elsewhere, this sort of vitriol flows like water from a fire hose. But you see, open source ultimately isn't about code. It's about people and how we treat them on a day-to-day basis. We're more than just the usernames that we see on places like Reddit or Hacker News. As Ash Dryden said at Ruby Midwest, it's people all the way down. As a community, we generally do a good job of treating people well using Minneswan, Matt's is nice, so we are nice, as our guiding principle. We all stand to gain by being more awesome to each other all the time. That way we see more of these and less of this. After all, we don't want people to think they're stuck in a minefield with no way out, do we? So for the next little bit, I want to explain some of the things that I've discovered that will allow us to improve ourselves as a community and continue our tradition of community awesomeness without unknowingly cause more drama. And I have a specific example that I want to talk about from 10 years ago. And this is something that I did on another open source project called KDE. And KDE, if you're not familiar, is an open source desktop community for Linux. And it's 2003, and I'm just 10 days prior to making this commit, had just gotten access to KDE's CVS repositories. No Subversion, no Git. So yes, I said CVS. I was bored one day, and I decided to try to find something to work on that was outside my normal realm, which was, at the time, instant messaging protocols and instant messaging clients. And so I hop into IRC, and I start poking around for something to do, and I get told I can help on this thing that you see here. And basically what I'm doing is I'm adding checks for nil to make sure that the code doesn't crash. And this takes about an hour, which is 10 minutes of actual change time, and then 40 minutes of compiling, because it's C++. And I end up with this. And a little while later, I got this particular reply. And I'm not going to ask you to read all of this, but we'll just dive into the first sentence. And I see this, and I'm just like, whoa, wait, what happened? What did I do? And I remember thinking, brilliant. Thanks, man. I appreciate your support so much. And I sort of sighed, and I'm like, what is the rest of this email going to be like? I was just doing what I was told. I asked for some guidance. What am I doing here? And you can make a lot of cases about what I should have done, send something for review or whatever. But the point is that I'm ready for a fight at this point. It doesn't matter that the code is wrong, but I get this at the end. And really, you're not actually sorry about being harsh. You're just saying that to make yourself feel better because you hate that it sucks that I did this thing, but you don't really want to say it. But this has a profound impact on me and my contribution to this particular section of code. I started committing to KDE in 2003, and to this particular module, I committed roughly 10 more times in the 8 or 9 years that I was contributing to KDE. My first commit was in 2003 on May 28th. My next commit was not for almost 2 years later, and all it was a simple fix so that the build would work. And then after that, it was a third commit to fix a bug so that I could actually have working email. And what this person's angry reply did to me was let me know that new people are generally not allowed in that particular section of the community, and it effectively drove me away. And sadly, this happens all the time, either in the Ruby community or elsewhere. So my first tip for you guys is to not respond while you're angry. There's a ton of things that you can do to make those situations better. If you're angry, go find something else to do. Come back. Read that thing that makes you angry again. Are you still angry? Well, then walk away again. Go do something else. Go do some push-ups. Get some exercise. Whatever. Something so you can come back and sit down and not be angry when you write that response. I guarantee you your response will be 100% better than the one that I got. So now that we've dealt with our anger management issues, I want to talk about what happens when we unnecessarily jump to conclusions. Now, I do this all the time, and I'm ashamed to admit that I do a lot more than I would like to admit. One of the projects that I work on recently upgraded to Rails 4, and the guy who did the work was nice enough to send an email that let us know that he'd merged this work in, which was totally awesome. Those are the kinds of communications that you want to do when you're working with lots of people on other projects. And I was caught up in some things. I was caught up in this talk. I was caught up in other contributions. And so when I saw this, I sent this awesome reply. And I got this very well-reasoned response. And I remember reading that and just hanging my head in shame because I had forgotten and not gone back to go look to see if he'd actually announced it until I saw this. So at this point, because I've jumped to conclusions, I've made myself look like a complete jerk. So this is the next tip. If you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes and see it from their point of view before you barge in with your point of view, you can avoid the situations like the one I just showed you. All right. So now I have a question. What do you guys think is the answer to this question? Does anybody want to take a guess? It's close. It's actually this, which is not enough people. And there's several reasons for this, actually. One of them is that lots of people go start their own projects instead of joining others. It's easier to do. A lot of people do it as a learning experience. And then other people just can't be bothered. And some other people just need a little bit of push. So that means we end up with projects where this is the case. Most of the time, 80% of the effort is done by 20% of the people. So that begs the question, how do we encourage more people to contribute? This is not the answer. I know that I have done this before, and it's not the way to do it. And fortunately, that was in a previous life once I actually wisened up a little bit and sort of grew up. Could you tell anybody in any other more condescending way that you're just really not all that interested in that thing that they just said, hey, I have this great idea. They're enthusiastic about it, everything. And you're just like, yeah, I'm not interested. So we can firmly place this in the do not use category. But we can make it a little bit better. And this is one way to do that. Patches accepted is nice because it signals that at least you're interested in taking their contributions. This is a little bit better because you're letting them know that you are actually happy to do it. But these are just kind of old and tired, and they're not as effective as they could be at getting people to contribute to your project. So this is what I have started doing with my projects. And the simple act of asking this question is enough to get many people to go off and solve their own problems, which is a beautiful thing. In fact, I actually merged about a week ago a pull request from somebody who had never contributed to open source before, and I got them to actually go off and update some documentation. So we're working on that lack of documentation problem. And it was fantastic. And I did nothing more than ask the person the question and let her know where she could go find the code to change. So this leads me to sort of tip number 3, which is to ask questions. Don't give orders. Even if you're a benevolent dictator for life in your project, you're not an actual dictator. So don't act like one. Pairing is a great way to get and or keep other people involved in your project. And like what Mark went through with the lightning talk today was great because when you sit down to offer help to people, that gives them the sense that you as a leader of a project are interested in having their contributions, and interested in having them work with you on your project. And that it's not just all about you and what you're doing, but that you're actually willing to form a community around your project. So this leads into tip number 4. If you're giving them help, then you're awesome. So I want people to offer help to other people in other projects. So having my pull requests merged is one of my favorite things in the world. And I especially like it even more when I see these sorts of responses to the pull requests that I submit. And in fact, this particular response got me to submit 2 additional pull requests to the project that I had originally submitted to. My first one got the previous slide, this perfect. My next pull request got this. And I actually did a third one, which was about at the limit that I could go with that project. And so I just stopped. One of my other favorite things is merging pull requests. And I love to do it with a little bit of flair, just because it offers that sort of excitement, and it signals that excitement for people when you merge their stuff. And this is why I love emoji. And I love to sprinkle these things, and I probably overuse them, but I love to sprinkle these things when merging pull requests, or just to express the fact that I like something that somebody has done. This helps provide a little bit of whimsy and praise and encouragement for these people when they come to your project. I also like to do things like this. I like this idea. This is great. Just to show people that I am paying attention to what you're submitting. I am interested in what's going on. And that it doesn't matter that you're a beginner or an expert. I will take your stuff no matter what. So this leads into my last tip, actually, which is to offer praise and encouragement all the time, anytime that you can do it. Even if you have to find something positive to say about a particular thing, that's something that you can give to that person as feedback that will help them out later. So to wrap this up and put a little bit of a bow on this, we do excellent with this in a lot of the cases. And we can do better. Much like companies optimize for happiness, developer happiness, customer happiness, whatever you have, we should strive to optimize for kindness. And in that case, if you want to learn more, I highly suggest you read this book. It's where a lot of the content from this talk comes from, and it's where I learned a lot of how to do these things in general. It's an old book, and if you actually do pick it up, I would get the version from 1981, which is how old it is. It's been in print since 1936. But the updates that they put in have been sort of modernizing it. The version from 81 is the one that you want. It's the best one, in my opinion. So I know this is really, really short, but that's actually all I got. And I am Matt Rogers. I go by MattR with an underscore on Twitter, and this has been open source pro tips from the trenches, and I would love to take any questions or have a large discussion about some of the things. Anything else before I turn the mic off one more time? All right, thanks.